Okay, the giant TCR versus the specialized LA Sprint. This came in from a comment by Yang Guan. LA Sprint versus TCR, please. And I've got a soft spot for both of these bikes, so I thought, yeah, why not? So let's crack on. So I think the first thing to point out is that LA range from Specialized is actually a bit confusing. And I remember when I first started looking at these bikes and trying to work out which one to buy, that I was getting a bit confused by the different versions of the bike called the LA. So currently, April 2020, in the UK, on the Specialized website, there's these 4 different bikes that you can buy, all aluminium frames. And these first 3, the LA Sport and the LA Elite, all have the same frame, and they just have different spec gearing and parts. So I think this one here is 105 and something like Claris and Sora or something like that, hence the pretty cheap prices. But then you've got the LA Sprint Comp Disc, which is what this video is about, and confusingly this bike, other than it's made of aluminium, has got very little to do with these 3 bikes, which is why it's a bit confusing, and this should probably have a different name like the Specialized Crit or something like that. But a bit further on in the video I'm going to compare this bike to this bike, and then you'll see what the differences are and how they really are totally different bikes, and not to end up buying one of these when you think you're buying one of these, because that'd be a bit gutting. Also available at £550 cheaper, you can get a frame set, and you can actually get a track frame set. So you've got the track dropouts on that, you've got the disc, and you've got the rim brake version. You can also get this rather insipid looking down under collection paint job, which I'm not a huge fan of, and in fact at this year's Tour Down Under, one of the few races that's happened this year, a lot of the Specialized riders had to wear this revolting coloured Specialized Evade helmet, and I remember thinking how for the Deceuninck riders it did not go with their kit at all. I don't know who came up with these colours, horrible. However, what did look rather cool was some of the Bora riders, Peter Sagan included I think, rode the Tour Down Under Crit on the LA Sprint. I think that's one of the reasons this bike is quite popular, is that you can really make it look super tasty, and it does have the credentials to match its rather cool styling. And in that vein, some of you may remember in a video that I made last year or the year before, I can't remember, I took the LA Sprint, and it was the rim brake version back then, and I did a little paint job on it, and it makes a nice canvas to come up with some pretty cool ideas. Okay, so here we go, the LA Sprint Comp Disc 2020 from Specialized. And I'm sorry, but the first thing we've got to talk about is this paint job, and I know that I'm constantly going on about how much the paint jobs are driving me mad, but this one, it just beggars belief. It reminds me of back in the day, 1992. I used to edit music videos at the company I was working at, and we made an appalling video for a band called London Beat, You Bring On The Sun, and this is what it reminds me of. I'd love to play you a clip of this, but then YouTube would flag it as copyright, and then London Beat would get the $2 that I earned from making these videos, so I won't play it. Look it up, it's hilarious. But as for this yellow-orange fade, that's just not cool, is it? What do you think? Give us a message down below if you like this colour scheme. Now, something that Specialized like to talk about when it comes to the LA Sprint is something they call smart weld, and I don't fully understand it, but I believe it's something to do with the weld is moved further away from the place that you would usually put the weld, therefore making it stronger, stiffer, and much more than that. I don't really understand. So paint job aside, this bike is coming in with mostly 105 other than the crankset. Pretty modest price really of $1,899 for what you're getting. It's obviously made of aluminium. This is size 56. I read a Bike Radar review of it that said it was coming in at 8.61 kilograms. And if there is 2 complaints about this bike, one of it is the weight. It tends to be a bit heavier than its carbon rivals, and the other complaint we'll get to in a second. But what you do get with this bike is the forks from a Specialized Tarmac SL6 and the seat post from a Specialized Venge. So I think that's pretty cool. So in fact, the first bike I want to compare it to is the Venge. So this is the 2020 Venge Pro. And if we compare that to the LA Sprint, we can see there we've got pretty similar geometry going on, and then obviously we've got some definite similarities around here. I think that's the Venge seat post from the version before actually. It's obviously different to that one. So that's pretty cool. I like this detail and the fact that they've matched the more expensive carbon bike, but really everything else is quite similar. The wheelbase, chainstays are the same length, and there's not much in the stack and the reach there. So just before we get to the TCR, the other bike I wanted to compare it to, other version of the Allez, the Elite, the one that you don't want to buy by accident. Not to say this is not a good bike, you know, if it's one of your first road bikes or if it's a winter bike, something like that, I'm sure this is a decent quality bike. But if we compare that up against the Allez Sprint, bingo. They really are totally different animals. Up the front end, they really are at different extremes of the spectrum. Race, endurance, sit up and beg. So that's going to have dramatic differences there on the ride. Obviously the Elite is a rim brake bike. And you can see here that the Elite's bottom bracket is a good bit lower, making the bike more stable. Allez Sprint has got a much beefier bottom bracket area there. And the Elite has longer wheelbase, mostly coming from the chainstays being longer there. But the actual seat stays pretty similar. Position and angle there. The other thing to bear in mind with these two bikes is the Elite comes with a 50-34 1132. When you start climbing and it gets quite steep, you're going to be able to keep spinning there, whereas the Sprint comes with much more flatlands riding type gearing, unless you're a pro of course with extremely strong legs. But a 52-36 1128, if you start getting up to 15-20% climbs, that gets a little bit grindy, and the problem with that is they tend to come with the short cage derailleur, so you can't just whack on a 32 or a 34. So it is worth thinking about gearing before you stump up for a bike and then have to change it all. So the other bike I was asked to compare this against is the TCR. Now lo and behold, by some weird miracle, they've both got exactly the same price, $1,899. Isn't that weird? What a coincidence. So first big difference, this is fully carbon, possibly with an aluminium steerer, can't remember, you'll need to check that. And this is coming in at 8.7 kilograms, it says on the website, the Giant website, because they're now listing their weights now, which is great. The only weird thing about that is the more expensive Advance 1, they list with a heavier weight of 8.74. That's a bit weird, isn't it? I don't know why that one would be more heavier. There we go. So let's compare the TCR against the Allez Sprint. There we go. So the first thing to notice there, I guess, is that the TCR is quite a bit shorter than the Allez Sprint. It's just a sort of more compact type frame. You can sort of see the Allez stretching you out here. And I mentioned earlier that there were two things that people kind of criticise about this bike. One being the weight, the other being the ride quality, which is very focused towards racing. And a lot of people say that you wouldn't really want to do a full day's riding on it. I couldn't really comment on that myself. You need to look at the reviews and see what you think. Or if you've got one of these or you've ridden one of these, then leave a comment below and let us know what you think. Have people got a point when they say that it's a very focused bike and that the ride quality is not great for all day riding? So the Allez Sprint has obviously got a lot more aerodynamic features going on, and ironically, even though I've said it's heavy, is actually a bit lighter than the Giant. There we go. Again, the Giant's got the 52-36 1128, so same deal with the gearing there. And again, the crankset is not 105. The other thing to note about Giants is that they come tubeless set up already, so you don't have to mess about with fitting that yourself, assuming that you're happy to keep the Gavia tyres, which probably aren't the fastest in the world. What I did find quite interesting, these are two bikes from two completely different manufacturers, photographed in probably completely different parts of the world by completely different people, and yet look how incredibly close. This touch point here is on the hood of the brake lever. It's almost identical, even though it looks like they've got completely different length stems and head tube positionings and bends in the handlebars. I think that's quite interesting. Uncanny. So there we go. You've got £1,899 burning a hole in your pocket. You need a new road bike. Which one do you get? Well, I think if it's your second road bike and you're planning to do a whole bunch of local crit races where carbon bikes tend to get damaged when they're crashed, and you want it to be pretty stiff and you want it to look cool when you put your deep section wheels on it, then I think go for the Allez Sprint, definitely. If, however, it's your main bike, your only bike, and you do all sorts of riding, up, down, round and around, crits even as well, bit of road racing, then it's got to be the TCR, I think. Time you change out these super heavy wheels, it's not going to be as heavy as that. And for that kind of money, I think you're getting a lot of bike. So there we go, that's my opinion. Give me your opinion down in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what other bikes you'd like to see compared. I do try and get to as many as I possibly can. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel.